maybe about a year and a half ago, I took what I do. I mean, what I do for the most part is I'm just obsessed with pizza the way that any normal human is. You like to eat pizza. You see boxes of pizza. You want to dive in. It's sort of decomposes every human when a box of pizza comes out. You like go back to 12 years old, and that's sort of it. And it's always going to happen for your whole life. It's just this thing that embodies the spirit, I think, of youth. And in a lot of ways, we're going to talk about why that happens all day today. I mean, today what I want to do is I want to take you through what we're eating, talk about where it comes from, what it is, and what it means, and where it's going. Just because around New York City, there's so many different styles of pizza, and the first thing that ever happens when I walk in a room and I'm like, oh, we're going to be talking about pizza, everybody starts asking questions about, well, what's the best? What's your favorite? What's, that kind of thing. I just want to let you guys know we're not talking about that today. That's just to clear the air, because we could spend 3 hours sitting here going around the room and everybody being like, well, what about this place? Isn't it the best? As I was walking up here, so I do walking tours and bus tours, and the guy who runs the bus squad, out of nowhere, text messaged me, hey, in your opinion, just a question, what's the best pizza in New York? I'm like, you couldn't get any worse of a question than that. Just because when you guys go out and eat pizza, I feel like the first decision that you're making when you're picking a place to go is you're choosing proximity. A lot of times it's like, what's in this neighborhood? What's the deal with that? It's very rare that you're ever in a situation where like, we're going to go anywhere within 15 miles. Let's pick one, and we're all going to like rent a car or something. And like, that's a lot more rare. But if you ever do that, you've probably, I've been in the same boat many times. You're picking places sort of based on adventure. Like right now in New York, we're in this amazing position of having so many pizza styles happening all at one time. Whereas in the past, like when you think of New York style pizza, there's certainly New York style pizza sitting on this table. New York Pizza Suprema is the name of one of the pizzerias that brought some pies. That's a classic New York pizza. Then we have Donatella, which is on 8th Avenue and I think 19th Street, 18th Street. And that's not a typical New York pizza. That's a pre-New York pizza. It's a Neapolitan pizza. Then we also have John's, which I think is all the way down on that end of the table. I think it's already all gone. Is there any John's left? There's 2 slices left? From what pie?
Mushroom.
Both mushroom?
Yeah.
No love for the mushroom, okay. Although now that you announced it, now everyone's going to be running over. Well, so we got a couple slices from John's, and John's is somewhere in between those two. And I'm not talking about quality-wise. I'm not talking about that one is the best and the other is a lower quality. I'm talking about historically. Just because as you go through time, you find developments from one style to another, and the developments all happen mainly economic reasons. History, economics, social positioning really have a lot to do with pizza styles changing. So I'm just curious, just right off the bat, does anybody have like a current favorite pizzeria anywhere at all in the world? What do you got?
Bar in New Haven.
Bar in New Haven. Bar is an interesting place because Bar opened about 15 years ago, and they're in New Haven. And if anybody's been in New Haven, Connecticut, New Haven is like a stronghold for pizza. It's the kind of place where sometimes I hear people say like, oh, I heard New Haven actually has the oldest pizzerias in the United States. Which is not really true, but New Haven has a lot of really old ones. They have got a place called Frank Pepe's, which opened in 1925. And then down the street, there's a place that Frank Pepe's nephews, Tony and Salvatore, opened a place in 1938 called Sally's. And these are these 2 big places in New Haven that if you live, or if you've ever been to New Haven, or if your family grew up there or anything, everybody has one or the other that they love. Then in comes Bar 15 years ago. And they do a very non-traditional pizza. Everybody who goes there really loves and I don't know if you fall into this category, they love the mashed potato pizza. You are in that category. That's cool. Totally atypical. Totally a non-classic, non-traditional pizza, but absolutely valid, in the eyes of the great pizza landscape. Because you really put anything on a pizza, and it still counts as that category. Now, so Bar is an interesting one. I'm glad that you brought that up, because it sort of crosses boundaries. Well, we're going to talk about these 3 main staples, these 3 strata, these bits of the evolutionary process within pizza. And then there are some places like Bar that don't fit right into it. Any other favorites? Like, what do you got? Pizza Moto, David, with the outdoor oven thing. And he's got a few now. And David's really interesting because Pizza Moto is a portable wood-fired oven, and he'll bring it to street fairs and things like that, and bakes these incredible Neapolitan pizzas. That's more similar to Donatella, except for the beauty of a place like Pizza Moto is that you're outside. He's going to hand you the pizza. It's never going to get trapped in a box. If we could have had these delivered here without those boxes, that would have been amazing. But we didn't, because Greg has like 2 arms, and that's about it. But what else? Any other favorites? So far, we've hit 2 totally different strata. What do you got?
The Pie Pizzeria in Washington, D.C.
Is that the full name of it, Pie?
It's called Pie, which has the net symbol.
Oh, gotcha. Just so you guys know, I mean, it should be pretty obvious. There are like 50 places called Pie with the Pie symbol, and they're not related. It's sort of like, what Ray's is to New York, Pie is to like everyone else around the country who's like, oh, here's a really cute, quirky name for a pizzeria, Pie. And I actually know somebody who owns a place called Pie in Rochester, Minnesota, and it's the Pie symbol and whatever. But anyway, I haven't been in that place. What's the style?
More Chicago style.
Really?
Not overly cheesy.
Is it Chicago thin crust or Chicago deep dish?
I don't know. They call it Chicago style. It's alleged to be Barack Obama's favorite.
Okay.
It was the first pizza place I found close to where I was in D.C. So
Proximity. So proximity is a huge factor in the whole discussion of pizza. The origin of pizza, the origin has nothing to do with anything besides proximity. Because, the way we're going to track these 3 different types of pizza are basically through the ovens that they're using, through the cheeses that they're using, the machinery that's available that they're using in the kitchens, and I think that might be it. There's no 4th one, but we'll see. So this is actually a good place to start because I brought some photos of things, just photos I've taken over the years, to try to help explain some of the progression of what we have on the table. And the first pizza that we're going to talk about is that, like Pizza Moto, it's the Neapolitan pizza from Donatella. Yeah, so do me a favor, somebody just hold that up a little bit, just so everyone knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. And at this point, there's so many. Oh, is that the sausage block to Rob?
Yep.
Cool. At some point, just pass that this way. Yeah, let's do it right now. Oh, thank you. Wow, this is like, you're like the doctor in the delivery room handing me my first child. This is great. Well, so at this point in human history, especially in New York, so many articles are written about pizza all the time, and Neapolitan is sort of like a big focus in it. But I want to really concentrate on what that means. Sometimes people look at a pizza like this, and they say, oh, this is a gourmet pizza. Oh, this is a highfalutin fancy pants pizza. The interesting thing about it is this is the oldest form of pizza. This is the original format. And the original format of oven are these giant, well, not so giant, these big wood-burning ovens. And you've seen them all over the place. This is not your first time seeing a wood-burning oven. But other wood-burning ovens around the city, Don Antonio, Keste, Motorino, Pauly G's in Greenpoint, Fornino in Williamsburg. I mean, they're all over the place. We could go on for an hour listing them all. And this oven is really important for what we were just talking about with proximity. Because the oven is the whole reason that pizza exists. In the early 16th century, early 1500s, we have these ovens are baker's ovens. And they're wood-burning baker's ovens. And you can find these going all the way back to being baker's ovens back to 2,000 years ago. In Pompeii, if you ever go to Pompeii or Herculaneum, you can find, I think, 30 or 40 of these ovens sitting around, like preserved, these ovens. And the way that they work is they're real simple. We're going to get to the functionality a little bit later, but all you need to understand is it's a wood-burning oven. They use wood, they fire it up, they get the oven chamber really hot, and once that chamber reaches what they call a soak point, that soak point is where the stone within the oven, the masonry within the oven, has enough power, has enough thermal energy that it can continuously bake product throughout the day without a live fire. And that's important because once you have a fire in there, like they do in this photo, you can't bake anything directly next to that fire. If you let the fire burn out and let the oven kind of even out at a soak point, then you can use any spot within the oven. So that's what bakers did. Bakers would just use the oven at soak point to bake anywhere within the oven. But in the beginning of each baking session, to test the oven to see if it was hot enough, they would take a piece of dough from yesterday and they would flatten it out and toss it inside the oven just to see if the oven was real hot. And if the oven's hot enough, then that dough is going to blister and it's going to start to rise and it's going to take about 2.5 minutes before it's blackened and nobody wants to eat it. And that is the first pizza. Really, that bit, the word pizza itself is just a mispronunciation of the word pita. And pita goes back to the ancient Aramaic word pitta, which just means bread. A pizza is really just a bread. Pizza is not defined as crust, sauce, and cheese. The tomato doesn't come on until way later. Tomatoes really the late 17th century at the very earliest. Cheese is happening even later than that because cheese is just too expensive until a certain point. It's all about having a piece of dough that when they start throwing ingredients on top of it, the ingredients that they're adding on top of that dough, it's also proximity and it's also economics. The butcher shop has leftover pig fat, and that's the first pizza topping. Lard, just strip chunks of lard thrown on top of a dough, and that's it. I mean, I don't think we got any today. Did you order any lard? I'm not kidding. There are places that do it. I mean, you can Keste on Bleecker Street and Don Antonio, which is owned by the same guy. They do that pizza. It's called the Mas Nicola, and it's okay that you didn't get it. It's all right. But if you ever have the chance, try it out. Share it with people. You don't want to eat that whole thing. And I mean, it's delicious. It's just it's a bunch of lard. But you end up having all these ingredients back in the day that are just because of proximity. So that's why when we're talking about something like mashed potatoes at Bar in New Haven, it's not like potatoes are hard to come by. Throw it on a pizza. If you're in a place that people like eating Hawaiian pizza, which is not really popular in Hawaii, by the way, then you got pineapple sandy. Yeah, why not? Why the heck not? These ovens, as a bread oven, this is your starting point for all pizza. And throughout that, we're starting to change a little bit. Like when we get on to the next step in pizza ovens, when we get to John's, that John's pizza is going to come out of a massive coal-burning brick oven. And this is a shot of Lombardi's Pizzeria on Spring Street. Lombardi's, have any of you guys been to Lombardi's? Yeah, Lombardi's right now is at 32 Spring Street. This is a shot of the original location, which is 53.5 Spring Street. It's a bar called Gatsby's now. And this oven is massive. You can see it's a wall. It's not like the little standalone oven that we saw before with these little guys. It is a whole wall, and it extends about 12 feet into the backyard of this building. And again, proximity and economics, and we switched from wood to coal just because wood is too expensive in Manhattan in the late 1800s. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, coal was just way cheaper. They were bringing in coal, truckloads of coal, which were used for heating all of downtown Manhattan. Anthracite coal was just cheap. So that's what they used in this oven, which is why that John's pizza that you have is a completely different texture, completely different flavor, just getting down to the crust. And this is sort of the early version of New York style pizza. Just from looking at it, this pizza is larger than that Donatella pizza. And that has a little bit more to do with the ingredients that are available here versus the ingredients that are available back in southern Italy, in Naples. And then, of course, the final oven is the deck oven back here. And this is a shot of New York Pizza Suprema, which we have smattered along over here. There's still a couple slices. And I had the opportunity of working here for a short time, and I did grow that mustache just so I would match everybody else who worked there. Everybody has a mustache there. I wanted to fit in. I was writing a series of articles called Undercover Pizza Lover for Serious Eats, and I did 3 different jobs. I worked as a slice slinger at Suprema. I worked at a place called Metro Pizza in Las Vegas, where I was a pizza maker on a busy Saturday night. And then I did 3 weeks at Domino's, where I went totally undercover. I went rogue. I applied for the job and then worked there for a bit and learned so much about why I don't ever want to go near there again. But anyway, I just wanted to show you guys, obviously you all know this oven probably better than anything else. But there's a lot of interesting things about this type of oven, and that oven, in fact, is part of why we even are here today. We would not be here today if pizza stopped with this. If they switched over to a coal-burning oven and suddenly everyone was like, oh no, I'm not interested anymore, done. You see, it's all about fuel sources becoming cheaper. The fuel source for, coal, in the late 1930s, coal becomes too expensive. Natural gas starts to be the big seller. And so natural gas is great for an oven like this because you can just flip a switch and it's on, flip a switch and it's off. Lombardi's, you can't do that. At John's, you can't do that. At Totono's in Coney Island, at Patsy's in Harlem, can't do that. The switch that you have to flick doesn't exist. Instead, to turn the oven off, you've got to scoop out the coal, and then you've got to pull it out of the oven. and then you have to wait 2 days or 3 days. I mean, really, I'm not kidding. You have to wait 2 or 3 days. And then if you want to heat it back up, let's say your coal oven goes down to room temp, you're talking 2.5 weeks. Just because it's all about the masonry of the oven. So that's why sometimes pizzerias tell you about how hot their ovens are. The heat in the air of the oven doesn't make as much of a difference as the masonry. What's up?
So those coal ovens, they run continuously?
These coal ovens, yeah.
Patsy's and Luzos?
Yeah, they run continuously. Luzos is an interesting one because they don't use solely coal. They use coal and they put wood on top of it. So that's a coal burning oven. It's built as a coal burning oven, but they also do wood on top of it. And they're hot all the time. You know, but places like Lombardi's have a bigger oven. It's physically bigger. So that's why they keep it going all the time, because it's more efficient to let it go all night than it would be to start the fire in the morning and then try to reheat it for 3 hours. It's more of a struggle. It's harder. So it's easier for them to maintain it like that. And each oven has these different nuances to it, which are so fascinating. The way that they work is so fascinating. In the inside of a wood-burning oven, first of all, it just looks great. You know, this is why people are, I don't know if you know, a lot of people are installing ovens in their backyards, or, you know, not in Brooklyn as much, but if anybody's interested in doing that, please talk to me. Seriously, I'm not kidding. I looked at this apartment a couple weeks ago, and they were telling me, they were like, yeah, we're going to do some projects in the backyard and thinking about putting in a wood-burning oven, and I freaked out, and that's probably why I didn't get the place, because I was so excited about it. But I went over there a week later, and I was like, here's some books, you know. Just invite me over. But you notice it's a dome shape in the inside of the oven. All right? This dome shape is really good because it's gonna help heat transmit by all 3 methods of heat transfer in an oven. Direct conduction, the pizza's laying directly on the floor of the oven. There's heat conducting right from the floor into the base of the pizza. You're gonna have a lot of radiation because all the heat that's bouncing off those bricks on the top is gonna centralize back on the floor of the oven. And then, of course, you have convection. Since this fire, you notice how the fire is sort of to the left? I'm taking the picture through the only opening in that oven. It's one opening right in the front. So air can only get in or out through that one opening. I know in the picture I showed you before, there were these vents up on top, the flue. Each of those flues is not connected directly to the peak of the dome of the oven. All cool air to feed the logs is going right in along the bottom, hitting the fire, heating up, swirling around, and coming out the front and up into the hood. So that hood is connected to that flue in the back. That's why when you look inside this oven, there's no opening inside there. All that heat is coming right out the front. But again, the problem is these ovens don't really work as well when you come into New York City just because of the expense of the fuel, which is why we're going to change things up a little bit. But I just want to show you another quick image about how fresh air is going to come in the front, warm up, move out, and exit again out the front. But a coal burning oven is different. And this is a more recent photo. This is a place called Verdi in Bushwick. I think it's on Irving. And this is an oven that the guy bought the building. He was messing around. He found that, hey, this is not a wall. This is an oven. And why not? I mean, this is the way it works. You see, these ovens at a place like Lombardi's or at similar places, actually in New Haven at Pepe's and at Sally's, if you look at the profile of any of these buildings that have these old coal-burning ovens, the building is 3 or 4 stories tall, and then it drops down to a 1-story extension for 20, 30, 40 feet, and then there's a chimney at the end. And that extension is the oven. It's all the oven. If you look at the profile. This one is interesting, though. This one's not on the ground floor. This one is in the ground. It's underneath the sidewalk. So this oven extends in the front of the building, underneath the sidewalk, almost definitely built illegally about 100, 110 years ago. That's the way that they rolled, you know. They just built something, and they said, if I get busted, I'll get the permit later. And that's what happened. I found the permit for the Lombardi's oven for 1898. But that oven is probably a little bit older than that. If they got the permit in 1898, I don't think they were like, let's get all of our ducks in a row and make sure everything's right. You know, we just moved here 3 years ago. We know the rules. No, it was just, they just did it and they figured it out later. The way this works is totally different. Instead of having 1 opening in the front, it's got 3. And this is just a handle. There's a light switch back there. That's not an opening. There's an opening right here, and then that little doorway to the right, and then below that doorway. So inside that door, that little slightly curved, little adorable little elf door, that's where they shovel the coal in. Right below it is the ash drop, which sometimes they'll leave open so that air can flow in, air can feed the fire, and as that air goes up through the fire, heats up, hits the top of the oven right around here, it's going to flow all the way to the back left corner to exit out the flue in this oven. So instead of being a circular motion in the inside of the oven, it's going straight across. And that heat as it goes straight across is a completely different bake when we go from Donatella to John's. Notice Donatella's pizza, it's a lot softer. It's a little more consistent in texture. John's pizza tends to be a little bit more, a little tougher, a little bit more of a bite, and that's because the bake time is going to be longer. Donatella's pizza comes out in 60 to 90 seconds, and John's is 5 minutes. Not that 5 minutes is bad, but.
Coal smoke hit the pizza. I mean, I always envision coal as being like burning oil out of my old hammer.
Yeah.
It's like dirty.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anthracite is about 92, 93% carbon content, so there's not a lot of moisture. Burning wood lets off a lot more smoke than burning coal, a lot more smoke. The difference is that the ash is easier to get rid of from a wood oven than it is from a coal oven. So that's the big thing. And of course, burning a fossil fuel is not a great deal. So I would not by any means advocate coal-fired pizzerias happening in every city around the world, but it's not as harmful. People think it's going to be harmful because coal has this bad rep, as it probably should be, but it's not. It's really any of the coal, any of the heat is coming on the right side of the oven. No pizzas are baking on the right side of the oven. They're all baking on the left, and they can't bake on the right because it's just too hot. And that coal fire is also a different fire from wood. It's more smoldering. You don't have huge flames leaping about. With that wood-fired oven, you got flames that go up to 12 o'clock on the top of that dome. And that flame is going to help you get blisters on the edge of your crust. And it's not that they chose, oh, let's make the flame big to get blisters. It was more like, oh, we threw the dough in when the oven is really hot and the flame is reaching up to the top, and we end up getting these blisters. And then the people of Naples figure, oh, well, we can't change anything because we like it. So that's why today we have an organization called the Associazione Veraci Pizza Napoletana, or the Pizza Police, as some people call them. And they have a series of rules that say the pizza must be 35 centimeters in diameter, the tomato that you use on top of it must be San Marzano, and it must be applied to the dough in a circular motion. And I'm not kidding about that. And it says the oil must be extra virgin, and the cheese must be fresh fior di latte, which is a cow's milk mozzarella, or buffalo milk mozzarella. They don't give you any leeway. It's really funny to me because, so many pizzerias, you think that oh, they've got secret recipes, secrets. No secrets. In fact, they publish what you have to do to make the right pizza. The best pizza has no secrets because the best pizza is really pretty simple, for me, at least what I like. But this type of oven, again, completely different from what we saw before. So that's why it's so hard to pick out what is the best, because the oven's just going to bake things differently. It's more like you got to pick what you're into, You got to pick if you're into basketball or football or baseball. They're all different paces of sport, They're all different. So that's why with these ovens, you kind of have to know which type of oven your pizza's coming from. And of course, there could be wood-fired ovens that the pizza comes out tasting and looking like a gas-fueled deck oven. That just means that it's not being used the way it's intended to, and that's all in the hands of the user. These are just tools. Just because you have a coal-burning oven or a wood-burning oven in your backyard does not mean that you're making the right type of pizza. So with this kind of oven, the inside of it, and this is actually funny, this is a rare day when at the very beginning of the day, when they still have wood in the pile to help burn some of the coals, where you do have a flame. But that flame is not by any means reaching as far as the flame before. This is a picture I took of the inside of Lombardi's oven after they did a huge restoration job to it to make it look the way it used to look, the inside. And you see the way the inside is shaped, it's like a barrel vault. It's not a dome. So heat is moving from one side to the other. It is not moving in a circular motion, one side to the other. And you're not going to have any pizza over there. Pizzas are going to start right around that point in the center. And if they have calzones, they're going to be baked closer to the front door. Because it's colder by the front door, calzones are thick. You don't want to bake it very quickly. You want to bake it at a nice pace, an even pace, so that the outside can bake and the inside can bake. But they're just fascinating. They're just a real pain. Nobody wants to use these ovens anymore, and that's why they fell out of vogue. Also because, to maintain them, you've got the coal on the side of it. every morning and every afternoon, in the middle of the afternoon before the dinner rush happens, you've got to scrape out the excess coal. So you can see better in this photograph, that little open door on the bottom, that's air coming straight in to fuel the coal, and the coal is sitting on top of a metal grate, just so you can get airflow. But again, and these are my feet sticking out of the oven. Because I wanted to show you this because when I told you about waiting 2 or 3 days to repair the oven, I'm serious. This was 2.5 days after they shut down the oven, and they were sending people in to replace broken bricks. This is a picture I took right before they did that huge restoration for the inside, and they let me crawl in there for 10 seconds, and it was amazing. And I never want to do it again because it was terrifying. But you know, the inside of the oven, it's so hot. It was 322 degrees Fahrenheit at that moment that the photo was taken on the floor of the oven. Now, luckily, I'm sitting on a piece of plywood, so that's why I'm okay. But it's extraordinarily hot. And again, that's why who in their right mind would want to build one of these now, you know, when you have to do this? I don't, have any of you guys, you know, heard about why there aren't so many coal ovens around anymore? A lot of people ask me about, you know, they hear that it's illegal to build a coal-burning oven for environmental reasons or for whatever. It's not at all. It's 100% legal. It's just nobody would do it because that's how you have to fix it. So rather than do that, you know, it's easier to just get one of these ovens, to get one of these gas-fueled deck ovens. How many of you have been here? Yeah, I knew, that's why I put this picture in here, because I knew that it would send a bolt of electricity through your hearts. For anybody who has not been there, this is a place that you will go. It's okay. Don't go with too many people. Go at 11:30 on a Wednesday. Call in sick to work. I didn't say that out loud, but you know, it's just he's the only guy who makes the pizza at this place. This is Dom DeMarco. He's at a place called DeFara on Avenue J in Midwood, Brooklyn, and this is actually a rare picture because he's using a peel to take the pizza, the Sicilian pizza, out of the oven. Usually he just grabs it, which is also terrifying because, you know, it's super hot. But these are deck ovens. And a lot of times people look at that and they're like, oh, no, I like brick oven pizza. Meanwhile, this guy makes some of the best pizza in the city, and it's, you know, regardless of whatever lists and the Zagat survey and all that, most people, my bus guy this morning is telling me about, you know, he's like, you're crazy, you like the Sicilian here better than DeFara, whatever. I wanted to show you this because he's using these deck ovens. He's using an oven that is the cheapest oven to get, an oven that started to proliferate right after the Second World War, after you got a lot of American soldiers coming back from serving in Italy during the war. And they're coming back and saying, well, I'm not going to build a giant oven because of the expense, and what if I go out of business? What if I don't do anything? You get one of these ovens. In 1954, one of those ovens, and there are 3 in this picture, one of those ovens was going for $500 new, $250 used on the Bowery. You could have bought any one of these ovens for $250 used. So you could put that in your place. If you go out of business, put a for sale sign on it, and then you're done. If you have these coal-burning brick ovens and you go out of business, you walk away from it. A lot of times you put up a wall in front of it. There are so many of those coal ovens laying around the city, so many. And you put up a wall in front of it and walk away and pretend it's not there. And that happened to my friend David Sheridan. David is opening up a place on Church Avenue in Ditmas Park in, I guess, a couple months. He signed a lease on this place. A week later, went in to try to clean up the basement, and he finds this coal-burning oven. He's opening a pizzeria there. He got an electric oven to use because he's like, well, I don't want to deal with the hassle of anything else. And there it is, right there, a coal-burning oven sitting there. It's absolutely incredible. The current Lombardi's oven is not the original Lombardi's oven. The original Lombardi's oven broke because the 6 train runs directly underneath it. So when they moved to their current location, they moved there because it's an old bakery oven that was used in a place called the Parisi Bakery. And when Parisi went out of business in the late 70s, they put up a wall in front of it, walked away. They said, we don't need to do demolition. Nobody will know. Lombardi's knew. And when they went out of business, they came in and they said, well, we're going to take this. It's perfect, you know? It's like when you see, oh, this house already has a pool in the backyard. Let's get it, you know? That coal-burning oven is the pool in the backyard of the pizzeria's house. What? So that's why it's interesting that we get to these ovens, and you know, this is really what people were using because it made sense. Of course, it works totally differently. The bottom door on any of these ovens, that's called the service door. You have 2 pipes underneath that have a natural gas-fueled flame that's heating up the stone. But on the top of the oven and on the sides and on the back, it's all stainless. So it's not really good at radiating a lot of heat. It's not going to bake a lot from the top. It's going to bake mostly from the bottom. And that's why the pizzas from Suprema are baked differently from the pizzas from John's and from Donatella. John's has more char going on. Donatella's lighter and fluffier. Suprema is that classic New York slice. You can pick it up and fold it. And the cheese only starts to move a little bit. It starts to migrate toward the bottom. And the oil starts to gather. And you could drip a little bit off the front, but don't blot it, at least not in front of people you respect. And then you pick it up, and it doesn't crack on the bottom. You take a bite, it's pure bliss. But that's the slice. It's so far removed from the origin, and people get into arguments all the time. People, Southern Italians especially, oh, that's not pizza. Meanwhile, in Southern Italy, they're eating pizza with French fries and hot dogs on it, and they're saying that that's okay. It's not okay. And if that's okay, then all this is okay, which I personally believe that it's all okay. And that's why it's so interesting that an oven like this, it's a tool. This guy makes these pizzas, and I take people from Naples to this pizzeria sometimes, and they're into it. I'm like, just don't worry, you're gonna. And they're like, oh, it's smell, it's small. And then they go in and they eat it, and they understand it. And then they start talking to him, and he's from Caserta, which is just north of Naples. And suddenly it's like, oh, now I get it. Because he knows how to work it. Working the dough is another big, huge concept that changes throughout time. But before we get into that, I want to show you guys this picture. This is a picture of a pizza oven factory on the Bowery. This is the only pizza oven factory in the whole city. And it still operates every day. They build these pizza ovens. So it's still going, and it's still totally classic New York thing. This is, by the way, this is on Prince Street. If you're ever on Prince and Bowery, there's two red doors, and you can hear them working on stuff. Just open up the doors. They're never locked during the week. Just open it. Seriously. That's when I took the picture. You just open it, and you look in, and you're like, what? It's like this secret world. It's amazing. And then he'll just flip it up and look at you, and then you run away. But, I take tours here sometimes, and it's really funny to look in. And people are like, wait a second, you can go buy a handbag over here, and you can go buy fancy shoes over here. And then there's these guys working on pizza ovens who don't speak much English. These guys are from Southern Italy. It's amazing. They breathe in so many fumes. The doors are always closed. So anyway, from here, I wanted to show you a little bit about dough. Just because the handling of the dough, again, is super, super important. Now, this is a guy named Jonathan Goldsmith. Is anybody from Chicago? Yeah. Have you ever been to Spaccanapoli?
Actually, I have.
Yeah. That's his place. That's Jonathan Goldsmith of Spaccanapoli, and he's wearing all this get-up with the name of a flour company, and he's a part of the Associazione Varieties Pizza Napolitana, and he's got this big wooden box, and right now he's kneading dough by hand because he makes pizza in the original Neapolitan style, where you don't use a machine. You have to handle the dough very carefully. It means that the dough is going to come out very light and supple. It's going to bake easily and bake quickly. It's great. But again, this doesn't make sense after the Second World War especially. It just doesn't make sense as economics change and you need to make more dough, which is why the Donatella version of dough, which they don't do it by hand like this, but I wanted to show you the extreme. The Donatella version of dough is using a machine that very gently kneads the dough, very gently incorporates all the ingredients, completely changes when you get to the next step. This is a picture of the dough mixer at Patsy's, which is very similar to what they'd be using in a place like John's. So John's is a coal oven. The era that John's opened in the late 20s and early 30s, Patsy's opened in 1933, and that mixer, it's got a tumbler in the inside. So it's going to move your dough around in a circle like this. It's not as gentle as using the hands, but it's not as brutal as the next step that happens when we get into modern pizza making, which is the gigantic KitchenAid on steroids. The Hobart H800 is this model, which is a huge, it's so sweet. Now, it's this huge mixer, and the big difference in it is that it's a planetary mixer. So it's going to mix from the top with a hook that goes down. It heats up the dough a lot more than the other mixers, which is not a great thing. Sometimes that can toughen up the dough, which has resulted in the New York slice, which we love. It's a happy accident. This type of mixer, It's an electric mixer. It lets you walk away while it's mixing. You don't have to sit there and maintain it. And also, if you notice that this last mixer I showed you, this one from the 30s, early 30s, it's just a mixer. Well, hold on. This one has this nozzle on the front where you can attach either a cheese shredder, a meat grinder, a vegetable slicer, whatever you want. This thing does 2 jobs at once. And that's why they started using it. Because it's all about having a tiny pizzeria. You know the tiny pizzerias, Joe's on Carmine Street, like little places where you walk in and it's 2 guys behind a counter. And there's a counter, 5 or 6 pizzas sitting out, a couple of ovens, and this kind of mixer in the back. And if they want to employ fewer people, then you got to get the mixer that takes the job of some of those humans, which is what this does. And that's why, as you get on, the contemporary New York slice is based on the result of this type of oven, the unplanned result of this type of mixer, which is just fascinating because that mixer, it's again, there's not a good or a bad mixer. Now they have all these crazy mixers there's one mixer, I don't have a picture, but it looks like a pair of hands, and it combines the dough. It's crazy. It's like, why don't you just get your buddy to do this, I don't know. But anyway, it's pretty interesting how the different handling of dough is going to change the result of it. So when you go to a place, if you're into, let's say you're into pizzarte, there's a place called Pizzarte on, where is it? It's right I think around the theater district. If you're into that type of pizza, and if you're into Donatella, and if you're into Caste, they're all made in a similar method with a similar maneuvering and similar ingredients on top of the pizza as well. Now, this is a whole different thing. And I had to include something about throwing dough up in the air because everybody asks about it. We just have to get this out of the way right now. Throwing dough up in the air, he's doing this to entertain people and because there's a camera sitting right there. And this is Gennaro Lombardi. This is a picture that was taken in the 50s. He's throwing this dough up in the air because American wheat, American flour, is a lot tougher than European flour. That's why American flour, you can't really successfully use your hands to mix a whole ton of it at a time. It doesn't pull in as much moisture as a European flour, and it's tougher to move. So if you ever get a chance, go into the kitchen at a Neapolitan pizzeria, just stick your hand in the dough and squeeze it, and then run, pull off the fake mustache, and then go to another place that's different, do the same thing, repeat, and then see what happens. But you'll notice that the more contemporary pizzerias, the dough is just physically tougher. So to stretch it out, they started stretching it out over the backs of their hands. How many of you make pizza at home? Yeah, so when you make pizza at home, you start off on the table. You have to push out, you have to extend the dough. You're basically moving around gas. You're moving gas from the center of the dough to the outside, and that in turn is what stretches it. Sometimes people get a rolling pin, sometimes people grab it and stretch it like this, and that ends up giving you weak spots and thick spots, and it's not very even. This is a way that they're able to even out the dough. He was stretching it over the back of his hands, and what he just did was instead of rotating it nice and evenly, he threw it in the air, and he's going to catch it back on the back sides of his hands. That's why his hand is facing down like this. So, but again, it's just for show. Nobody really ever does that for fun. I mean, it is for fun. Nobody ever really does that because if you put them in a locked room, put 10 pizza makers in a locked room and make them make pizza, nobody's going to throw it in the air. You could drop it. Who knows? But the handling of the dough, it just completely changes. Now, this type of crust, this blistering, is which one of the ovens? We had the wood, we had the coal, and we had the deck oven. Definitely. It's a wood oven because that fire reaches up to the top, bounces down, and creates all those blisters. But I really want to get into that cheese for a second. Because you probably noticed this, that the cheese in all these 3 pizzas were totally different cheeses. The one at Donatella was a fresh mozzarella. And that's this stuff. The fresh mozzarella, which is bright white. It's really milky. I didn't put the picture in the right place. Anyway, it's really milky. It's this bright white milkiness. And it's bright white and not yellowy like some of the other cheese because there's no extra oil added. You see, cheese like this is just made from curds, chunks from cow's milk, just from curds and water. No preservatives added. But it's a problem. Another economic problem is that this type of cheese doesn't ship. It doesn't last long. It lasts 2 days at most. So as pizza expands in the United States, we lose this kind of cheese, and we start getting into low moisture mozzarella cheese. And low moisture mozzarella cheese is the stuff that you shred. So you go from cheese that you slice to cheese that you shred. I have some cheese pictures that are missing in the universe somewhere, but you know what cheese looks like. And cheese that's on this pizza over here, that New York Pizza Suprema, it's a high quality cheese from Wisconsin that is a whole milk, low moisture. It's a company called Grande, and their mozzarella is excellent. It's just that when you bake it, some of the fat is going to rise up to the top because they're in ovens that are lower temperatures and are going to take longer to bake. It's a deck oven. And that oil is going to rise to the top, and that's what you're seeing, the coloration on the very top of it. You also see, since it's a shredded cheese, a lot of that tomato is going to bleed through it. And the tomato is a whole other story as well, because if you look at, this is another picture from DeFara. And I took this picture of the tomatoes he's using because he's using these boxes of canned whole tomatoes, which is the old traditional method of doing sauces. So I don't know if you guys can see this from back there, but there's 2 cans here. One of them says pizza sauce, the one on the right, and then the one on the left are whole tomatoes. So there's a tomato. You can see kind of 2 tomatoes floating around in this puree. The one on the left is the old method of doing tomato, and the one on the right is the new one. On the left, it's whole tomatoes that are going to be crushed, and at Donatella, that sauce is just crushed tomato with salt, and it's uncooked, because that's the way it was back in Naples. Because in Naples, I think earlier I mentioned about how you don't really get tomato on pizza for quite a while. You get tomato, the first recipe in a Neapolitan cookbook for a tomato sauce is 1693. And then you don't really have anything hitting dough until long after that. So you're probably talking about the mid-18th century where you start to get more tomato landing on dough. So it's kind of a new thing. But at that point, they're just taking tomatoes, crushing them up, and throwing them on dough because they're plentiful. They're around.
Well, tomato was native to the New World.
Exactly.
They didn't have it in Europe until 1492.
Exactly. And after 1492, because that first ride did not get everything coming back. It took a couple of rides to figure out the tomato. The tomatoes originally from Central America, it ends up being cultivated, we don't even really know. Probably in Mexico, but again, we're not really sure. But then it does end up coming back to Europe because of the Spanish conquistadors. Because remember that you had a lot of people sailing under the Spanish flag, but they're Italians. Because at that time, southern Italy was under Spanish rule. So you get all these products coming back, like the tomato, and they're all landing in southern Italy, all because southern Italy is a place where there was fertile soil. So that's what you have going on the left. But remember, in the United States, up until really the Second World War, you have all the tomatoes of Italy. It's really hard to get tomatoes out of Italy between the First and Second World War. Mussolini kept all the tomatoes. It really just didn't want to, very seriously, wasn't exporting tomatoes to the US for sure. So we were kind of left to our own devices, and that's bad because our tomatoes were not that hot at the time. And so instead of people preparing sauces just with a crushed tomato, they started cooking down the sauce and started adding oregano and adding basil and adding who knows what, sugar. And that's what's on the right. You can buy a can of pizza sauce. Some pizzerias take a lot of pride in that they do their own sauce. Some of them buy the pizza sauce and they add more spices and things because they want to put their mark on it. And then you just end up getting this really highly acidic, it really gives you a little ooh after you eat it, or really pasty. You get a lot cleaner taste from the stuff on the left. It's just that for a while we didn't really have good tomatoes. Now we do, and now it's getting okay. But I want to show you this because you can even see the coloration. The right side is a lot darker than the left side. So you can tell that's been cooked. That's been cooked, which means that the water is going to evaporate and you're going to have condensation of sugars and maybe even slight caramelization because of so much sugar that's already in that tomato. So right there, a cooked versus on the left an uncooked. On the pizzas that we've had, Suprema, that one is an uncooked one, the margarita pizza. Suprema's regular one is cooked, and Donatella's is uncooked, and John's is also uncooked. So we had a little combination.
Where are the best tomatoes grown in the U.S.?
That's an amazing question. Okay? So we actually did a taste test of a bunch of different commercially available tomatoes. This was, I think, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I just went to different grocery stores. I went to restaurant supply stores. I grew some in my backyard. We did everything. And it was a double-blind taste test. So I labeled all these cans, got rid of the paper labels, gave them to somebody else who then served them up to people in dishes labeled G, I, F, J, whatever, letters of the alphabet. And we gave everybody a sheet. And these were people, pizzeria owners, culinary students, pizza writers, people who I'm friends with who just wanted to come over and eat some tomatoes. And everybody ranked the sweetness, the acidity, the color, the texture, and the overall flavor. And I have all that raw data. If anybody wants to see it, it's all on my website. So you can see, there is not one best tomato because maybe you want acidity, maybe you want sweetness, and maybe you want acidity and sweetness. And that's fine because we got all that on the data sheets. Now, with all these tomatoes, you see there's one that's called San Marzano. San Marzano is a big name in tomatoes. If anybody makes pizza at home, you probably use the San Marzano. There's a lot of pride when you use a San Marzano tomato because they talk about it on the Food Network, and you're just like, I did it, Rachel Ray, I did it. San Marzano tomato. San Marzano is just a variety of tomato. You can buy packages of San Marzano tomatoes seeds and grow them anywhere you want, but the traditional San Marzano is grown in the soil of the southeastern slope of Mount Vesuvius, which is why some of these cans say San Marzano on them. I know you can't all see it from back there, but there's one over here that says San Marzano on the bottom, but it says DOP, which means Designated Origin of Protection. When it says DOP, it means that it's guaranteed to be from that region. When it just says San Marzano, like this one over here, La Bella San Marzano, is an excellent tomato, but it's not a DOP. It's not guaranteed to be from that region. Does it make it good? Does it make it bad? You'll find out in the results that we have because that's what we were checking. I wanted to know, does DOP make a difference? Does the other stuff make a difference? This one's called Sclafani, which is this great Italian-sounding name. Those are grown in New Jersey. But since a lot of people like to buy local, they have another label that says Jersey Fresh. And so you could buy the same tomatoes depending on if you wanted to have an I on the end of it or if you wanted to say it's from New Jersey. The same stuff, and we checked them, and it was funny because our taste testers put them pretty close to each other. And they didn't know. So it's this roundabout thing, although the DOP thing, it's so interesting. Somebody from the Italian consortium of San Marzano tomatoes, within the past 8 months, came out with a statement saying that 95% of San Marzano tomatoes shipped to America are fraud. They're fraudulent tomatoes that are packed by Italian companies using Chinese tomatoes or whatever, somewhere else, and they're sent over here because we don't have any laws about that. In Italy, they have law that if it says DOP, it's got to be from that region. That's how you get the stamp. If you get busted there, you pay a fine. Nobody's ever gotten arrested. You just pay a little fine. It's no big deal. But if you get caught with them here, nobody cares, because you're just excited you got San Marzano tomatoes. Somebody have a question? Yeah.
Yes. So all these tomatoes that I see right here are canned.
Yes.
I've heard thoughts, ideas, rumors that if you have canned tomatoes as opposed to box crushed tomatoes, you sometimes can get a little bit of a metallic taste to them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you sort of seen? Do you care? Do you not care?
Oh, I care, yeah. We tested Pommy, which is the big boxed tomato company. They don't make a boxed whole tomato, as far as I've seen. We only tested whole tomatoes. But yeah, since tomatoes are very acidic, and since anything you can has to have a pH that's acidic enough to stop bacteria from growing, to prevent them from growing, that's why you might get tinniness out of a tomato. But more often than not, you can get rid of that by just rinsing off the tomatoes under some lukewarm water. Is really it. Some of it is rumor, some of it is true. But really, you taste it, and if it tastes good, it's good. Remember that these tomatoes, there was a picture I showed you with the tomatoes floating in the can. The stuff that it's floating in is usually chopped up junk tomatoes. And so you don't really want to eat those. You want to eat the whole tomatoes coming out of it. That's why in the US now, a lot of people like to buy a canned sauce or a crushed tomato, because then 100% of the volume of that can will be goods that you can use. When you buy them as whole tomatoes, you might get rid of some of the juice, and then you're not getting 100% of it. So that crushed tomato that's in the box may be good and may taste better, but the tomatoes themselves, I didn't find it taste any better, and I actually find the other ones to taste better. But I mean, I would love to do boxes because these take up a lot of room. look at all the wasted space between them. Boxes are really great for stacking. And really, I mean, the Pommy company was at the International Pizza Expo in Las Vegas this past March, and they were really excited to show you how much space it saves. The same volume of tomatoes in boxes is like this, and in cans is like this. And that's, that's what sells to people, at the International Pizza Expo in Las Vegas, which is a real thing and not just a fantasy. Yeah.
You mentioned that you don't feel like the best pizza and that proximity as important. Like, let's say you just go to a neighborhood place and you're, a famous familia, wherever you end up because you're on that block.
Mm-hmm.
Are there some key signs that you look for, or key indicators? Like, how do I just, on a one-off stop evaluate if this is a place worth getting a slice?
Yeah, big time. Well, the first thing I should say to that is that it only costs $2.75 to find out. So really, when I find a place, I don't really go in and like snoop around and be like, ooh, it's, I go in and give it a quick look, and if it doesn't look bad, then, I drop the $2.50 and check it out, and then I know. But it's telltale signs that you might want to walk away. Heat lamps, of course, having pizzas that look glazed over. If there are more than 10 pizzas sitting out, then there better be 10 people sitting in that place, It's places that have fewer pizzas, I feel like you can rely on them more just because the turnover is going to be so much faster and so much cleaner. So at a place like Joe's on Carmine, they only have 4 pizzas ever sitting out. You're always going to get a fresh slice. You go to places like Suprema, I think they have 15 or 20, but there are always 20 or 30 people sitting there, so you know that people are eating it. When you go to some other places, like there's one I just saw paper in the window 2 days ago, and I was like, great, because they stunk. You see so many pizzas sitting out and then not enough movement happening. So yeah, I mean, you can't really judge them by, something like a particular ingredient, I wouldn't tell you to go to the garbage can and look for like some of these cans, which by the way, to answer the question that came up before, the tomatoes that did the best in our taste test, the highest overall flavor, were both from California. They were both from Central California, which I was blown away by because the DOPs came down very low. They were very acidic. The California ones were very sweet. So it may have just been that we liked eating them out of the can. We liked eating it fresh better. Maybe cooked, it would have been different. But it just seemed like, if you like it out of the can, you're going to like it after it's been on a pizza for 5 minutes in an oven. So it was just really interesting to see that happen. The number one tomato of our whole list was not the $6 San Marzano or the $3.48 San Marzano. It was the $1.49 Trader Joe's canned plum tomatoes. I loved it. I thought that was really, really great. But all these ingredients, they come in all because of social and economic and historic reasons, and that's kind of why we end up eating the way we eat. It's not that somebody just decided one day that this will be a good topping combination. In Chicago's such a big pork city that sausage is the thing to do in Chicago. And in New York, people are always on the go and on the move, so this is why we have a slice culture. We don't have deep dish pizza in New York. There's no one doing it except for 2 locations of Pizzeria Uno, and that's even debatable if they're doing anything there. But it's because we don't have time to wait 45 minutes for a pizza to come out of an oven, and that's how long it takes. So much of it has to do with the vibe of a city, and right now you see pizza by the slice starting to pick up a little bit more, especially in cities where you have foot traffic. It's the thing. In Los Angeles, where everyone's in their car, and that's it. When you have pizzerias that have valet parking, which kills me, it's not a big slice culture. And when there is a place that sells slices, everybody's like, oh, there's a place that's the best. It's the best now. It's just like New York. And it's not. It's cutting it up and selling it to me one piece at a time doesn't make it the same as New York, And New York has all these myths and legends about what makes the pizza here so different, and people say it's these old ovens or it's the water or anything like that. And really what it comes down to is that there's a long tradition of making pizza, and that the pizza that was made here originally is one step removed from the original pizza of Southern Italy. And if the Southern Italians had gone to Moscow instead of coming to New York and New Haven and all these places in the northeastern US, then you would have had a higher bar for pizza there. And if then pizza got so popular there that we got it, we would have had third tier, In the Midwest, you have a lot of pizzerias that opened in the 40s and 50s. So when people say, oh, I got this great place, it's been around forever, it's been around since 1958 or something like that. It's not all that long in the American pizza landscape. So places that have been around that long are basing themselves off of what came before them, and you're always going to have this little bit of degradation happening. Until recently, until right now, where we're really looking straight down the line of the future of pizza at places that are like, earlier before you guys came in, we were talking about Roberta's in Bushwick. I mentioned Pauly G's before. Places like this, Speedy Romeo in Clinton Hill, where they're doing interesting topping combinations and using pizza as a genre food and not as a dish. It's pizza is the genre, and then you do whatever you want to do within that, and you can play, and you can do anything, which is why mashed potatoes work on pizza, and people can admit that in public, which is not always the case. Sometimes people, are into funky toppings. You ever had peanut butter on pizza? They do that in New Haven too. Weird. And yet those in New Haven, they're all about like having some of the oldest pizza in America, and it's like, they're not bound to the tradition, which I think is really great. And that sort of seems to be where we're going in pizza right now, is people are pulling it into local traditions, doing things that are interesting. I'm meeting with a guy tomorrow from, I don't even remember where he's from, but he wants to open up a pizzeria. It's going to be one of the only pizzerias in his town. And his concept, what he sent to me, the list of ingredients that he wants to use, it's a lot of this local stuff. And it's a lot of these dishes that he's used to eating, and it's great to put that onto a pizza concept and kind of see where it goes from there. But I know that the pizza is dwindling, and I don't know if you guys have to stop talking about pizza, but if anybody has any questions, I would love to try to answer them if possible. Yeah.
So you're not going to say what's your favorite pizza. What's the worst pizza you had in New York?
Oh, great. That's a good question. The worst pizza I ever had in New York was at a place, and I won't mention the name just because if come up with me later and I'll write it on your arm with a knife or something so you never forget it. And it's this place in Crown Heights, and I got an email from them that was like maybe the first couple of months when I started doing pizza tours. And my biggest fear when I started doing pizza tours is like, oh no, people are going to think that I'm like calling myself an expert, which I've never ever done that. Greg can call me what he wants, but I would never call myself. Every person who eats pizza is a pizza expert, But this person sort of challenged me. They said, if you really consider yourself, a pizza person, you must have gone to this place. They make every slice by hand and all this. And I'm thinking, oh, they make a slice one at a time? Whoa. And of course they meant the whole pie. It was whatever. Nomenclature difference, that's okay. But so I went to this place. I drove out there. My friend was in the car with me, and I said, hang on here. I know it looks weird, but I just got to go in and eat a slice. And if it's great, I'll take you in. It'll be great. And I grabbed the slice. It was very weird. It's a place, it felt like a school cafeteria that had been empty for 6 years. And the only people that ever stood in there were small children or the two people who served the pizza, but they definitely did not make it because they didn't know really anything about what was going on. And I ate it. It's the only pizza that I've ever taken a bite and then not swallow it. And that was one of the worst pizzas I've ever had. I remember chewing it a little bit, and then I thought, is something wrong? What's wrong with me? Am I having a heart attack right now? And it just turns out that it was just real bad. So I'll tell you the name later, but I'll put it this way. You're never going to go there. You're never going to even find it by accident. So it's probably best to just don't ever go to Crown Heights. Yeah.
I'm a wine lover, so whenever I open a new bottle of wine,
Yeah.
I know there's historical, but I look at the color and the lead. I try to get the aromas first before I actually taste it.
Mhm.
So you being a pizza lover, we're all pizza lovers, when you hear that there's a new pie you just gotta try, I'm sure you don't just grab it and take a bite right away.
I don't know what else to do to it. Well, the thing about pizza is that it's such a simple food, which is what's so great is that anybody can overthink it quite easily. And that's why I try to not. It's not like with wine, how there are things chemically going on that you need to prepare for yourself to take in. But with a slice of pizza, I think almost the wrong thing to do is to look at it and overthink it first. You could overthink it later. I'll do that every day. But I like to, first of all, wait till the pizzeria is open for 2 or 3 months. Let them work out the kinks. And then go in there, sit down, eat a slice. I wouldn't take it in. I don't inspect angles of the slice first. Because the most important thing at the end of the day is not the oven. It's not the type of tomato that they use. It's how it tastes when you eat it, because it's food. I don't care how long you age the steak or whatever. If I eat it and it's bad, I don't like it. Again, I don't care about, so many places say we use this type of flour, this type of tomato. We have the buffalo sitting right there in the corner. You know, I don't care. If it tastes good, it's good. So many times, again, this happens on the West Coast a lot. They say, oh, we use imported New York tap water. That's why our pizza's so good. And then I eat it, and I'm like, man, you better start importing some other water, because it's just, I don't care what you do, it's not good. So really, no. Jump in there, take a bite, and then that's it. Is this a pizza that I want to eat when I'm not hungry? That's the big test of it, is, you know, because when you're real hungry, anything could taste great. You wolf down a couple slices. You always got to go in, whenever I'm doing pizza tasting, raisins and pretzels to take off the edge before you go in. You know, because if you drove 2 hours for it, you can't go in there. You can't go in there without anything. Yeah, what's up? Definitely. You make pizza at home? What's your method? Do you bake it on a pan, on a stone? You make your dough, you buy your dough? Yeah. So this is a method that a lot of people use that I've actually never tried. It's the skillet broiler method, where you heat up the skillet, so you make a really hot surface that you then put your dough into. That surface conducts heat directly into the dough, starts to bake, and then you put it under the broiler to give yourself top heat. And yeah, that's a great method. I would say just overall, if you make pizza at home, if you make your dough, just let your dough relax. If you start to stretch it and it shrinks back, cover it and walk away from it. Don't force it. Always underwork your dough. I mean, really, it sounds ridiculous. Even I hear it coming out of my mouth, it sounds ridiculous. But I've got a friend, John Arena, who owns a bunch of pizzerias in Las Vegas, and he's from out here, and he always tells me the same thing whenever I see him about, we always watch people working their dough. And he always says, you know, that dough, it's alive, and it is alive. There's yeast in it, it's constantly changing, but he says it's alive in a way that you're not even thinking about. If you torture it, if you harass it, like, it remembers that. It does, and it will toughen up if you overwork your dough. That's why you work your dough gently and easily, and always put it onto a hot surface, like that skillet, or if you have a pizza stone, the big mistake people make is they have the pizza stone, and they have the stone, they put their pizza together, they put it on the stone, and they put the whole thing into the oven. And the whole point of the stone is to be hot, so that when you put your pizza onto it, it immediately starts baking the pizza from the underside. So I know a lot of people who say, oh, I tried the stone, but it just doesn't work. You know, and there's no way that it can't work, because that's all it's supposed to do is be a heat soak. That's it. It doesn't work if you don't use it correctly, because the boxes never say to heat the oven up for an hour, so nobody would buy them. But yeah, you got to heat it up a long time. For home pizza making, I would say just take it easy. With toppings, less is more. You know, take it easy. Don't be in a rush. Patience. It's all it is. And have fun. I mean, that's like, even if you don't think it's the best pizza you've ever had, it's still, you made it, and it's just going to taste better. You had a question?
Yeah, maybe that would be the final question.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So, Jafara, often you get there, and if you don't get there right at 11:30, and it's the weekend, you wait a long time for your pizza. I have this notion that it's pretty good pizza, don't get me wrong, but I have this notion that people love it the way that they do, because by the time they get it, they're so hungry and they've waited so long, it's kind of like a pizza Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
Is there anything to that?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, part of it is that when you go to any place that has hype, you know, that there's so much going on, and you're looking around, you see all these people. When you're at Dafar, there's this amazing communal thing that happens where everybody is there. Half the people are there looking at the other half being like, oh, it's your first time? I'll show you. You know, that kind of thing. And then the other half are like, oh, what do we do? Where do I go? It's smoky in here. My eyes are crying. Like, what am I going to do? And I love watching that whole scene. But the best way to approach Dafara is definitely not hungry, because you'll always be hungry by the time it comes out. And if you're bringing somebody there who's never been there, don't hype it up. Don't tell them anything. Sometimes I'll get tours of like a family from Australia or something like that, or from Texas. I had a family from Texas. They never heard anything about it. I told them where to meet me. I said, meet me in the front of this place. I didn't say a word, and they ate it, and they were able to kind of discover it for themselves, which is kind of rare. You know, it's rare around here to find somebody who's never heard about it. At least, you know, there are myths going around where people say, oh, what about that place where there's that guy, and you know, he only makes 10 pizzas a day and whatever. When you're going to a place like Dafar or anything that has that hype, you know, you just have to bring those pretzels, bring those raisins, you know, water. Water's good when you're getting hungry. Just drink some of that water. And at the Fara, this is probably the last thing I should tell you guys, because I know you guys probably have to work today. But I'm going to stay here and eat all this. But at a place like the Fara, the best method is you go in and you look down at the counter, and sometimes there's a slice pie, and sometimes there are slices that are unclaimed. Jump on that and then put your order in for the opposite. So if there's a round pie sitting there, order a square whole pie. And if there's a square sitting there for slices, order the round whole pie, just so you can get the best of both worlds, especially if you're taking somebody there who's never been there before. You've got to jump on it. You've got to walk right in. And if you get there at 11:30, they'll see you, and they usually have a pie ready to go. You know, they're on top of it, although they make it seem like they love drawing it out. It's just that he just won't move any faster. And you don't want him to, because it already comes out kind of funky and burnt, and that's the character of it. And, you know, you don't want it to be burnt by accident. You want it to be a little charred because of the scene and because of what it's like. So if you guys have any other questions or anything, you can always send me an email. My email is just scott@scottspizzatours.com, and you can keep a blog on my website. The website's scottspizzatours.com. You can easily keep in touch on Twitter at Scott's Pizza Tour, or the Facebook, or any of that stuff, or just ask Greg. I'll give you my phone number. You can text me, hey, what's the best pizza in New York City? Just a quick question. Don't think you've ever heard this. What's the best pizza in New York? Drives me crazy. But anyway, guys, thanks for coming and for eating pizza, and thanks to Greg and Melissa for putting this together, because if you guys would have seen some of the emails of organization for pizzas, it would have blown your mind right there.